Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
8:06 now on this Thursday morning in the nation's capital. Things move rapidly in this town. Big goings on right now. History in the making. We have a front row seat, and you better be sure to buckle up and join us for the ride, because we got you covered from the perspective, news, and analysis that you would count on here on this program and on this station. I'm Larry O'Connor. Peter Doocy joins us in 30 minutes. Good morning, Patrice Onwuka. Good to have you.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, everybody.
Joining us is KT McFarland. She, of course, a former Deputy National Security Advisor. Her book about President Trump and her time in that administration is called Revolution. And KT joins us now. Good morning, KT.
Good morning.
We're having this summit here, a NATO summit in Washington, D.C. Why we need to pay attention to countries who still believe it's okay for men to wear Speedo bathing suits to the beach, I'll never understand. But, KT, there are a lot of big things going on, including this move toward bringing Ukraine into NATO, which last I checked was Vladimir Putin's rationale, whether it was legitimate or not, to try to preempt by making a move on Ukraine. This, how does this help matters, I guess, is a good question.
Well, it's just not going to happen. I mean, the Ukrainians may dream that that somehow they're going to be admitted to NATO day after tomorrow, and that's going to solve all their problems. So that's magical thinking. Article 5 of NATO treaty says that if one country is at war with another country, then anybody in the NATO alliance is also at war with that other country.
Right.
And so if Ukraine joins NATO, and Ukraine's in a hot war with Russia, if Ukraine joins NATO, then we're all in a hot war with Russia. That's just not going to happen.
So who's going to stop it? Are there enough countries?
Well, that's the problem. Yeah. That's the big problem, is who's in charge. You know, you said a minute ago that we're kind of living in this historic moment. And Lenin, of all people, said it right. He said there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. And that's where we are. I mean, things are moving very, very quickly. And most of the European leaders who are assembling in Washington for the NATO conference, they're kind of looking at, a lot of them are new guys that were just elected a week ago, or who are in a greatly diminished political position. So they naturally look to the U.S. for leadership, but now they're desperate for U.S. leadership. And what do we have? We have an empty suit. And we have complete political turmoil at home, so nobody's in charge.
Well, so picking up on that thread, KT, I mean, they're looking to the United States for leadership, and we have Joe Biden. And this is supposed to be Joe Biden's big week to demonstrate that, you know, the continuous stumbles that he's been experiencing most recent, well, frankly, all of his administration, but when the news has paid attention has been the past couple of weeks, that those are one-offs, and really he is still the steady hand in charge of our foreign policy. Do you think he's making that case? Do you think he's assuading the concerns of these international leaders? And are you expecting anything really to come out of this whole NATO summit this week?
Well, what I'm really worried about is that President Biden will come and, show increasing decline. And he has a press conference today. And not only will the NATO leaders be mumbling, oh, my God, who's in charge? But the leaders in Moscow and Beijing and Pyongyang and Tehran are all looking at this, too. And they're saying, hey, this is our moment. Nobody's in charge. And we know, normally United States every 4 years is in this period of about a year where nothing much happens, right? Because it's an election season. And then we have a presidential election, and then we have 3 months before the new president takes office. And so that's a period of vulnerability that the United States always has. But now, when you're not even sure who's going to be president next week, certainly not sure who's going to be the Democratic candidate, and we're looking at a 6-8 month period where nobody's going to be in charge, that's when our adversaries are going to say, if we're going to make a move, this is our time, especially because they're looking at the polls like everybody else is, and Donald Trump is favored to win. They all know if Trump comes in January of 25, they're all in trouble because he'll drill, the price of oil will go down, Russia and Iran will be bankrupt, he'll use tariffs against China to get the deal we want, and we know that he's going to go after Iranian sanctions, and he's going to be a tough guy. I mean, they're all nervous that the sheriff's coming back in town. So I think they're going to try to get away with as much as they can before the sheriff.
I got so many questions for you, KT, as usual, but let me just follow up on that one. who are you most concerned about in that regard? Who will take advantage of this in the most aggressive and detrimental way, as it appears, as we have no leadership and no sort of and no one at the helm of foreign policy and national security? Is it Iran and the terrorists? Is it Putin? Or is it China? China's awfully quiet right now.
They're all talking to each other. This is the problem, Mary, is they've got their own alliance. And so I'm concerned that maybe, let's say Iran makes the first move, that Iran unleashes Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas for an all-out assault against Israel, knowing that President Biden is going to distance himself from Israel for U.S. domestic political reasons. And so if they can sort of get daylight between the United States and Israel and make a lot of daylight between the United States and Israel, Iran can make a lot of progress on its one goal, which is to destroy the state of Israel. And maybe Iran announces it's a nuclear weapons state. And then others will join in. Because once it looks like there's blood in the water, then you can expect Putin. He would probably go all out in Ukraine. He'll start bombing hospitals and schools, and who knows, he might even try to nip off a part of NATO in the Baltics. And then China's going to look at that and say, well, now they're completely distracted in the White House, so this is our moment to have a cyber attack against Taiwan, or to make some kind of, I don't think military move, but some kind of an economic or technical move against Taiwan. And you know, the White House, there's only so much oxygen there. And if they're all bouncing around worrying about an election, bouncing around about worrying about Joe Biden, who's the candidate, and then all of a sudden they're beset with these other international crises, it's a terrifying thought for the United States.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying just to think that, you know, President Biden needs so much sleep these days. And if there is that 11 p.m. phone call, it seems like Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, said, well, you know, there are people around him who might get the message to him. But KT, I'm pretty sure President Trump has had those 11 p.m. calls when he was president, and he woke up for those calls if it came in at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Like, how serious is it that we have a president who increasingly needs more sleep and to be out of commission when danger arises?
Look, Patrice, I work for President Trump. He never sleeps. He sleeps a couple of hours a night. And so, first of all, would you have to wake him up at 2 in the morning? No, he's probably already awake. But number two, what really upsets me, I mean, as an American citizen, forget political parties, is these people who are grasping for power. And they're announcing behind the scenes, don't worry, Joe Biden may be asleep. Joe Biden may have dementia, but we're in charge. We're brilliant advisors. We're going to really run things. Who elected them? And they're so grasping for power. They've got to be dragged out of the White House with their fingernails clutching to the Oval Office carpet, that they're willing to really just subvert democracy, sell America down the road, only so that they can stay in power.
Yeah. KT, if I could ask you just parent to parent here, and I think I speak for a lot of people in our listening audience right now. Your daughter is a member of the Florida House of Representatives, but also a Navy reservist. She's a naval officer. She wears the uniform. As you know, my daughter wears the uniform. Any parent right now whose child wears the uniform and can be sent to war, sent into combat at a moment's notice based on the direction and command of President Joe Biden, when you were watching the debate, when you continue to see the diminished capabilities, the incapacity of this man, our commander-in-chief, I'm having trouble sleeping at night. Because I know the deal we made when our child went into the military. They know the risks they're taking. But there's this built-in understanding that the people in charge, the infrastructure, the chain of command, is going to do what's in the best interests of our nation and our children. I don't believe that anymore.
I'm concerned that with this sort of long-standing, sort of sacred vow that we've taken to the American military is, you know, we'll give you all the power, but we're going to be your civilian commanders. You are not going to do what Julius Caesar did. You are not going to, you could, but you're not going to take over and run things. There's not going to be a military coup in America. And in exchange, we have a pledge to you. We're going to take care of you. We're going to give you the equipment you need to do the job. But we're also going to be responsible about when we send you into conflict, when we send you in. We're not going to do it for crass political reasons.
Yeah.
We're going to do it when the United States national security is threatened, when our vital interests are on the line. We're not going to do it because we just need a crisis and then we're going to throw some bodies against the crisis. And by the way, I might point out that it's your children and my children, but not their children.
Right.
Yes.
That's right. All right, KT, you didn't make us feel much better, but I appreciate it. I always appreciate talking with you. You always make us smarter.
Much, KT.
KT, thanks for joining us.
You.
That's KT McFarland, 816.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
On the next Vince Colonnade show, Joe Biden does his big boy press conference, and a world-famous brain surgeon joins us ahead of the chaos. Join us 3 to 6 right here on WMAL.
Joe Biden has lost Hollywood. Just weeks after the big, ritzy Hollywood fundraiser that raised upwards to $30 million for the Biden-Harris campaign, George Clooney wrote an op-ed yesterday saying, "The man I saw at that fundraiser is out to lunch and unfit to serve. It's time for him to step down." At the same time, yesterday on The View, Michael Douglas also participated in a fundraiser. Here's what he had to say.
Michael, I know that you're a longtime Biden supporter, and we've been watching the news this week. It's a little bit disheartening. You even hosted a fundraiser at your home in April, right?
I did.
So what do you think of his debate performance, and do you agree with calls for him to step aside? Even Nancy Pelosi seems on the fence now about him stepping aside.
I know, this is such a tough one, but I adore the guy. 50 years of public service.
He's a lovely man.
He's been a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And this just happens to be one of these elections that is just so crucial.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. I don't worry necessarily today or tomorrow, but a year down the line, I worry. I am concerned.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to make it go back and forth. I'm looking at some of our politicians who spoke about Biden dropping out last week, and then all of a sudden this week now they're hedging their bets.
Because he's digging his heels in.
Yeah, he dug his heels in.
Yeah.
Well, we need courage. We just generally need some strength and courage on side of both parties.
All right. Well, wait a minute. I think the Democrats sticking their necks out saying he needs to go are exhibiting courage.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And also, I think there are plenty of questions about Michael Douglas and George Clooney raising all of this money for Joe Biden when they saw it with their own eyes that the man was unfit to serve. The drip, drip, drip continues. Also, by the way, we're told, I had mentioned earlier about this George Clooney thing, that this doesn't happen without Barack Obama's approval, and that Barack Obama is operating behind the scenes here. Politico this morning, quoting now from Politico, while Obama did not encourage or advise Clooney to say what he said, he also didn't object to it. So he did know about this ahead of time, and he didn't say, George, don't do that. Obama is working, and this is the bottom line, Obama wants to retain his power and influence. Why doesn't anybody ask the fundamental question, why does Barack Obama still live in Washington, D.C.? Why is this former two-term president still living here? It's not about his children in high school anymore. That was the pretense. We're going to stay here as long as, Malia is in Sidwell friends. Well, that's years ago.
Yeah.
Why are they still here? And why are so many former Obama people, driving back and forth from Kalorama to 1600 Pennsylvania? The entire calculation behind the scenes right now is, how does Barack Obama still retain his influence on the White House? And I think everyone's saying the negotiations are with Biden about his pardon and about his money, and that may be the case. But there are additional negotiations going on with Kamala Harris right now to ensure that Obama still gets to have a say in what goes on and still has the influence behind the scenes while he waves and smiles at basketball games and NCAA tournaments, acting like a man in retirement. He is not a man in retirement. He is a man in full. You don't retire to Washington, D.C., guys.
No, you don't.
That's not how it works.
That's not the ranch that you want to live out your days on.
It ain't.
There's a lot of violence up in Colorado. But, listen, I think it's so telling about Kamala Harris. I go back and forth about whether I think she'll be at the top of the ticket when Biden steps down, because if they're not acting as though she's the anointed one, you don't see the Obamaites, you don't see the media, you don't see the donors playing her up, talking her up as though she is obviously the most capable, steady hand to take over from her boss and ensure a seamless transition. That should, given that she's the second in charge, that should be the natural movement of things. She should just be able to step in, take over, and run the country and run the campaign. campaign, and everybody should be galvanized behind her. That's not happening, and that's
Right.
a telling reason why she may not be at the top of the ticket.
It's not happening because they hate each other. Everyone has known that as an open secret in Washington, D.C.
Wait, I thought he called her a good-looking woman. I thought Obama said Kamala Harris was a good-looking woman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Biden and Kamala hate each other. Because,
gotcha.
listen, Joe Biden is the oldest president ever to serve. You would think that from day one there would have been discussions. I know it's, not pleasant, but hey, you're the oldest man ever to serve as president. Let's make sure. Remember how they kept calling it the Biden-Harris administration? Biden-Harris administration?
Yes.
Well, Harris is the odd man out here. Her name may be on the letterhead, but she doesn't have anything to say. It's 8:23. Chris Plant is in the building, and he will be taken over here in about 30 minutes. In the meantime, here on O'Connor and Company, it's Patrice Onwuka right there and Larry O'Connor right here. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning, Larry and everybody.
Beautiful Thursday, and joining us right now, prepping no doubt for his big boy press conference. Although, let's face it, Fox News' Peter Doocy. It's always a big boy press conference when you're in the room, Peter. Good morning.
Good morning, Larry and Patrice.
Good morning.
Before we get into the details of this extraordinary 2-week stretch, what do you make of the fact that they are sort of owning this very infantilizing, emasculating language of a big boy press conference? Is there irony involved here?
I don't know. I mean, I remember a couple years back in Iowa, I was giving the president a hard time about crowd size and how everybody had a bigger crowd than him. And he said something to me along the lines of, I can handle it. I'm a big boy. And so I think it's coming from him.
I see. All right. Well, what do you expect today? Have you been told, are there ground rules? Will this? What is the setting for this press conference? Will it be a Trumpian-style press conference that we remember? Trump would sit there in the briefing room and just go on until the last person had a question asked. Do you expect that today?
And the president has done one like that. It was in January 2 years ago. He talked for about 2 hours, and books have been written about how steamed the first lady is still, that nobody went and pulled them after like 10 questions. We don't know. All that they'll say is that it's more than 2 and 2, which they usually do at these foreign leader summits, 2 questions for each leader. And it's going to be over at the convention center where NATO is being held. It is not going to be at the White House.
Interesting.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So a very limited number of questions. It sounds like it's going to be pretty controlled. Peter, you had an epic question. We are calling it the question of the week. Can we play cut 45?
He also said he's sharpest before 8 p.m. So say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Who do you call? The First Lady?
He has a team that lets him know of any news that is pertinent and important to the American
I think
people.
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, were you surprised with her answer? I mean, or is this something that you guys know, that he just, it is what it is, what happens at 11 p.m.?
Look, what I was getting at is that when he tells Democratic governors who are worried he's going to drag them all down in November, he needs to sleep more and go to bed earlier, he's not just telling Democratic governors that. He's telling bad guys all around the world. If for some reason somebody was forming a plot, now they know when there's a window that the response might be slower from the White House. And so that's mostly what I was getting at. So, she answered it. I know that there are procedures in place, and that's good to know. But a procedure can only go so far. Like if there's a whole chain reaction of somebody in the Situation Room to somebody at the National Security Council to the Secret Service, the president is still asleep. He has told us he is strapped into a CPAP machine now so that he can sleep better. I don't know what the process is to actually, once we get to the end of this procedure, to actually get him in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and Peter, this is why we like you so much, because you ask the questions that all of us are wondering. It's like that. When you watched that debate 2 weeks ago, the first thought is, oh my God, is this who responds if there's an international crisis? So thank you for that. Also, listen, you've had your very cordial and animated back and forth with Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House spokesperson. She got caught in, well, how did the AP put it? She was inaccurate in her response. I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word. She's lied to you guys this week. She has withheld information. She's deflected by giving alternative facts and non-responsive responses. Do you get the sense that there's kind of a cover-up going on right now?
Well, look, for people that don't have anything to hide about the president's acuity or his cognitive ability, the story sure changes a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this is an issue where even somebody as senior as the press secretary is walled off from the president and his private doctor, who has been his doctor for a long, long time. And, left the military, went into private practice, came back just to be the president's doctor. And there is just a lot of, I think there's a lot the president doesn't share with anybody. They don't trust a lot of people outside the family. And it puts somebody like Karine Jean-Pierre in a really, really bad spot because they're sending her out there to answer questions that they're not telling her the answer to in a timely way.
Well, and obviously then that puts you guys who are reporters just trying to disseminate information in an even worse spot because now, I guess you end up filling in the gaps. If you get picked to ask the question today, I don't know if they've already selected reporters, Peter, but do you want to preview your question or give us a hint of what you might ask about?
Yeah.
I know that there are White House people driving in right now listening to the show. I can't say exactly, but it would probably just be in line with other questions. Pretty much the singular topic of the week.
Okay.
By the way, I have a keen ear for this sort of thing. Is that a little 15-month-old daughter I hear in the background rummaging around?
Yes, it is. It is. I'm watching her before I go. She's helped me with my questions.
Good. I'm glad somebody is. Good Lord. The last thing you want is for her to check with Grandpa about this. Oh, man, that'd be a nightmare.
All
right, Peter, have fun today.
All right, thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
That is Peter Doocy prepping for the big boy press conference.
Well, why not have a 15-month-old help with the questions for the big boy, right?
Girl. There's a big girl press conference is what it is. It is 8:43. The Daily Show had a fascinating segment yesterday, although I don't know if this was meant to be a comedy bit or not. The Daily Show had a focus group of black New York voters. All right, these aren't just black voters across the country. Maybe from West Virginia or the Rust Belt or what have you. No, these are New York City black Americans. Listen to Cut 47 and see how this went.
Okay, so who will you be voting for in 2024? Daryl.
Do I have to say his name? I don't want to, but more than likely it's going to be Trump.
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Who are you going to be voting for?
Biden.
And then Victor?
I'm with her.
Oh, Biden, okay.
Trump.
Trump?
Biden.
Biden?
Trump.
Okay, we're an even split, which... I didn't see that coming.
I didn't see that coming. There's more to this that I want you to listen to, but quickly, Patrice, it's notable. It's true. 6 people, 3 and 3. If you see the video, you will have noticed 2 of the 3 who are voting for Trump are women. All 3 of them are under the age of 40. The Biden people skewed older. What does this tell you, based on your understanding of the African-American vote these days?
That the younger generations of blacks are not owned by the Democratic Party. Their allegiance is not with the Democratic Party anymore. And whether it's on a number of different issues from the Israel-Hamas war to frankly, gas prices, economic issues, or the illegal immigrants who are displacing young people in schools, closing down schools, and some consider even taking away opportunities for younger blacks. I think there is definitely erosion of support among younger black voters today.
Well, listen to this next cut, because, of course, the Daily Show person says, well, why on earth would you vote for Donald Trump? Why do because as if, gee, you're supposed to do what we think you're supposed to do. Listen to the answer.
So do you think there's going to be a big shift, any sort of change?
I think it's going to be a big shift.
Me too.
Big shift?
Yes. Big
really?
Shift.
Okay.
For me, I've always been a Democrat, and it's like for the most part with the Democratic Party,
they always make a bunch of promises that they can't deliver.
You know, they use the issues of the African American community as a soapbox to stand on and make promises, you know, just to get us to come out and vote. And then once we vote and everyone's in place, it's like, well, what happened?
There you go.
Yeah. Tired of being taken for granted.
Taken for granted, taking advantage of it, and lied to. And it's a lot of Joe Biden's a perfect example, but other politicians say, reparations. They're not going to do reparations. There's not going to be any reparations. And they don't have the fortitude to say to black voters, no. There's no reparations. I'm not going to pander to you and say I'm going to do that and then not do it. There's a lot of things that you keep saying that you want us to do, and I'll say it on Election Day, but then I won't even touch it. I will disregard it completely. How about actually be truthful and fact-based up front and work with voters to actually understand how the government works and what is right and wrong and the way we should move forward? That's kind of what Republicans are aiming to do, and I think maybe that shift is happening, Patrice.
Well, yeah, and you know what? This whole of government approach that uses the equity lens across everything, also it falls flat with regular black people who are saying, I don't care if the person in power is black. I care whether or not I can afford my gas, medicine, and to take my family on a vacation yet. They don't care if the person, what the gender or sexual preference of the person in power is. They just want to know whether or not, their kids can go to school or if their high school is being shut down to be housed by illegal migrants. That's what matters.
We'll see if you're right. If they get the chance to vote for Kamala Harris as president, we'll see if that holds true.
That's a good point.
8:52.
Yeah.
That's a wrap, Patrice. Thank you. Be back tomorrow for Friday.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Here comes Chris Plant. Christopher.
Here I come. They tell me it's real hot out today. It's a little warm because of CO2 and global warming and all that stuff. And you see, one of the founders of Greenpeace has come out, and he's challenging this whole thing. He's like James Inhofe. He's a climate denier, I think. Greenpeace founder. That's a lot of fun. And you see NBC News and the Biden camp counter-programming the opening night of the Republican convention in Milwaukee.